So good morning and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, Mastering OKRs, Three-Step Success Formula with Ben Lamorte. Right. I'm your host, Senthil, President and COO of Profit.co. We are excited to have you join us today, and we are happy to partner with Ben Lamorte, the OG OKR coach. In his website, he's mentioned as someone who has more OKR coaching experience than anyone on the planet. And that's probably a truly valid claim. So we are continuing the series of webinars with the last one coming in April, exploring the ins and outs of OKRs, strategy execution, and performance management. Before we dive in, I would like to briefly introduce Profit.co, your partner in strategy execution and performance excellence. Today's organizations need to be agile, aligned, and high-performing to succeed. At Profit.co, we are dedicated to helping you achieve just that. We are a complete performance management company offering a comprehensive suite of solutions to drive strategy execution, project delivery, and employee performance. Our three pillars of performance excellence are, number one, strategy execution. Right? Align your organization around a shared vision with our OKR and balanced scorecard solutions. Right? Cascade goals, track progress, and make data-driven decisions to drive success. Number two, project and portfolio management. Deliver projects efficiently and effectively with our robust project management capabilities. Right? Number three, employee performance management and engagement solutions. Right? Unlock your team's full potential with our performance management and employee engagement capabilities. Right? And then, as you can see here, Profit.co for the past 12 plus quarters has been featured in the leadership quadrant of G2 and several hype cycles of Gartner. And that's primarily based on the excellent customer reviews that we have had, right, based on the product excellence as well as our customer success capabilities, right? So with that, let me go ahead and do a quick introduction to Ben Lamorte, right? And also a quick introduction to the series that we've had, right? Ben Lamorte has, I'll first finish this, quick introduction to our webinars.
Yeah.
So folks, today we are on the third of the four webinar series, right? So we've already covered, the introduction, which is, mastering OKRs, a three-step success formula, defining the formula. And then last month we had the one on reflect and reset, right? How do you leverage your 2024 OKRs to supercharge your 2025 planning? And today we are really turning our focus on executing OKRs, right? How do you turn the strategy into action? There are going to be a lot of very practical steps and very practical ideas which Ben is going to share. And of course, the final session is going to be on April 8th, right? How to maintain momentum throughout your OKR cycle, right? This is probably the most important session, right? Would definitely encourage you to attend, right? With that, a quick introduction to Ben, and then I'll hand it over the stage to Ben. Right? Ben definitely has more OKR coaching experience than pretty much anybody on the planet, right? He coaches leaders, Fortune 500 leaders, as well as startups, right? Essentially on every aspect of OKR planning and strategy execution, right? Primarily through OKRs. And he has a pretty impressive list of customer list, right? And what I personally, really liked about working with Ben is that, he has actually captured all his learning, right? Working with, some of these illustrious customers into two books, right? And these books are pretty, I would say, go far deeper, right? And with a lot of practical insights than you would really see anywhere else, particularly the OKRs field book for, coaches, right? It's very, very practical, and I would highly recommend them, right? Having said that, let me hand it over to Ben to take forward.
Hey, thanks, Senthil. And so this is the book that I recommend, the OKRs field book, if you're looking for how to do OKRs. And I'll be referencing some ideas from that book. I'm really excited about this, the third webinar. I do want to put a plug in for the fourth. This third one's going to be, I think, the best so far. I do recommend checking out the recordings if you missed them, the first two. But this will be the best so far, and the fourth one will actually be better. So they just keep getting better as we go. And what I mean by that is super important is to just start with the OKRs definition, because I really want you to remember that OKRs is a verb, right? It's something you do. OKRs is not something that you just write down and say, see, I wrote down my goals, and so I'm done. You don't get to finish OKRs. OKRs is a critical thinking framework. That means that you're asking a set of questions, and you're asking these questions all the time. Okay, it's an ongoing discipline. So you don't just ask these questions once a quarter or once a week or something like that. You're asking them. It's part of the way that you approach your work, and it's trying to get employees to work together, right? So this is not about you and did you get your job done. This is about us and how can we work, and sometimes across teams, to even achieve better outcomes. And it's focusing effort to make measurable contributions. Look, we don't want to focus on everything, right? But we do need to focus our effort on something. And here's the point with OKRs: you got to have measurable contributions. You have to see measurable progress in order to say that we're succeeding with OKRs. Spoiler alert, if you say we're going to launch 3 features, that's not going to be measurable contributions. That's just going to be check the box, we launched 3 new features. Great, so what? What is the progress that we make because of those features? Did those features actually harm our business? Well, wait a minute, that's not good. So I want to be careful as we talk today, when we talk about turning strategy into action and how does that work? OKRs is going to play a vital role here. And I think it's a bridge between strategy and action. So let's look at that. You might remember I talk about the 3 phases. So deployment coaching. I won't go over all this because we've talked about it before. But today we're doing cycle coaching, and this is step 1 of the cycle: set and align. As Santil mentioned, we did reflect and reset earlier. We sort of did this out of order because of the end of the year. But now we're doing step 1, set and align OKRs. And this is really where you get started defining your OKRs, okay? The next webinar, the final one, will be here, step 2, check in and monitor. Okay. That gives us this idea of the focus for today's webinar series will be about defining OKRs, okay? Here's the tip: create your OKRs in the context of strategy. There's a little bit of an issue here because some people will ask me, Ben, we don't really have a clear strategy. Can we even set OKRs? If I was truly a philosophical person that was logical, I would probably say no. You need to have a strategy defined prior to setting OKRs. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. However, in the real world, sometimes you can still define OKRs even with a vague strategy, because in some way, the OKRs that you create will actually then help you to define your strategy. I think it's important to point that out. I also want to emphasize that the software, right? Profit is a software company, I'm sure you know that, is going to really come into play in step 2, checking in. That'll be our last webinar. So how do OKRs fit in with your strategy and execution? Well, I think you get it, right? We need a mission, we need a vision. These are, you know, in 10 years, what will the world look like? So our company has to have this long-term vision. But we also want strategic initiatives, right? Things that we're working on. We're going to move to the cloud, or we're going to, you know, acquire this new company, right? It's going to take a pretty long time to get through that. Objectives and key results are typically in the 3 to 6 month range. For those of you listening carefully, you know I said OKRs, right, is like a bridge between strategy and action. This is often missing in organizations. In other words, they have the mission or vision and strategic initiatives, and then they skip this step and they go right into action plans. I'm trying to tell you, this is an important step. This is what I've dedicated my last 10 plus years to doing. And it can be very hard, but I think it can be very powerful, all right? So when you're first defining OKRs, these are the big problems. I'm going to walk you through each of these. Well, the first one, the OKRs are simply not connected to strategy. So we write an OKR like optimize regression testing or something like that. And we say, wait, how does this connect to our strategy? And then they say, I don't even know what our strategy is. Well, wait a minute. Why did you put optimize regression testing as the objective? Well, that's what we do. So a lot of times people, unfortunately, are stuck in the weeds and they're just writing objectives about, quote, that's what we do. That's not how we do OKRs. We want to connect OKRs to strategy. Now, defining too many OKRs, I've seen this so many times, where I have clients that have spreadsheets with thousands of key results, okay? And then the reason I laugh is that I say, well, how's it going? They say, Ben, we need you to help us have less OKRs. Well, why did we do OKRs in the first place? To focus. And you see why I'm laughing. If you've ever seen a spreadsheet with 2,000 rows, it's really hard to say that this spreadsheet is helping me focus. What it's doing is it's giving me a massive headache. So anyway, having a small set of OKRs is key. Writing key results as a list of tasks, measuring output, not outcomes. Wow. I want to do 3 hours on this because this is such a big problem. For example, well, I'm going to get into them, but for example, launching features. Launching features is a task. Post the blog, right? Those are not key results. Posting the blog is not, going back to this, is not an objective and key result. It's something that's more of a something we just got to get done. It's an action, it's a task. Go do it. But we need to understand, and our brains don't really work well this way. We can think long term, right? Oh my God, in 10 years, I want it to look like this. We can think this week or next couple weeks, maybe this month, I want to do that. But this OKRs is a kind of a difficult time period to think about. So while also failing to define why the objective is important. I see this all the time. So we just write the objective and we go right to key results, but we need to align on why. So I won't go over all the solutions here, but just so you know, this is how you deal with each of these pitfalls. All right, this is my big quote. And because this is the most common failure that I see in step one, remember, step one is where we're setting OKRs. And I'm not going to tell you where I heard this, but somewhere on the web with a thought leader on their website, believe it or not, and it's embarrassing to me that I saw this, is a key result, launch 2 new features. This is actually the example that we use as OKRs coaches to say what not to do. This is what you should not do. Launch 2 new features is a check the box thing. Did we launch the feature? Yes or no? Check the box. Here's the quote from Christina, who is the author of Radical Focus, a leading book on OKRs. You see it here. If you get all your tasks done and you check all those boxes, but nothing gets better, guess what? That's not success. You did not execute your strategy. You checked a box. We've seen cases where all of the OKRs have been achieved. And then the CEO comes in and says, so what? We didn't make any progress on our strategy. Oops. So what I'm trying to tell you is don't do that. If you have key results where you check them all off, we did them all, and you're not executing your strategy, you have failed with a capital F. Wow. Hope that's not happening to you. But to some extent, it's easier to write check the box kinds of things. Don't do that. Take the time to write real OKRs. This is a mission exercise, which I just wanted to point out, that we find that teams often do not have missions as context for their OKRs. So a given team, let's say you're a product team, or maybe you're even a squad where you're a cross-functional team, whoever you are going to set OKRs as your team. You should actually take an hour each year and do a mission exercise for your team. This is the way the exercise works, okay? So I'll leave you at that. You can go over it if you want later. Here's the thing. Here's the outcome of that mission team exercise. The first one, and again, true story. I've been doing this long enough to where some of my stories may not seem believable. But I'm working with this quote startup company that now has 5,000 employees. So a very successful startup company that has grown very fast. And they have a team called Category Management. They're an e-commerce company, so they sell stuff online, right? Category Management. Put yourself in my shoes. I have no idea what that means. So I say, okay, what is your mission? Like, why do we exist? Who is our customer? What do we really do in category management? And I kid you not, they said, we manage the category, or we manage the categories. I mean, okay, sure. But what does that mean? That's like just flipping the words around. And after about 40 minutes, we came up with the 4 rights. We ensure the right products are in the right categories and can be easily found by shoppers in the right location of the website at the right time. This, to me, was a huge breakthrough for them, because now they have these 4 rights, okay? Because what they're doing is they're making sure that, like, shoes, men's shoes are found in the men's shoes with the sporting goods or whatever, and that those products are in the right categories, and then they're in the right location of the website, and that those, so now it's got to be at the right time, because maybe there's a sale or a seasonal effect, or now it's time for women's shoes to go on sale because we're near Christmas. I'm making this up, but they have seasonal effects in these stores. And they had an objective now based on making sure stuff was there at the right time because of the timing of the holidays coming up. So they were able to align. They knew what their strategy was. They knew what their focus was by having the mission as context. Now they can pick out their OKR in the context of their strategy, setting themselves up for success, okay? The marketing team example, and this is the one I'm going to use for today, it's more generic, right? Deliver tools to support the sales team, drive brand awareness and trust, something like that. That's a mission. So that's what they're always going to be doing, right? It's not this month we're going to deliver tools to support the sales. No, this is what they do for all of time. That's a mission, right? That can serve as the context up here. Here's a sample marketing team level OKR. So deliver tools to support the sales team, drive brand awareness and trust. That's their overall timeless mission sentence. But I'm going to talk about the things in red, particularly because they can drive execution. Well, the objective should too, but most people do this, right? So here is the objective: increase the quality of leads cost effectively, right? But why? A lot of times people forget to put why for the objective. So notice here, we're putting in a couple sentences around why the objective is important as context. And this is to educate the rest of the organization and the marketing team, right? To align on why. We're not even measuring the return on investment of marketing events. So that's bad. And the cost per lead is 105, and that's not viable as we scale. And the sales team is telling us that the quality of leads we deliver is poor. So why now? Well, the new CEO wants visibility now to create an ROI-based marketing plan next year. Here's what was going on. The marketing team needs to focus on this now because the new CEO is going to start firing people unless we have an ROI-based plan, or cutting back on marketing spend because the new CEO doesn't just spend money on sponsoring golf events or whatever and sort of hope it works out. The new CEO wants ROI-based marketing plan. So this is a fear-based motivator, right? This is going to get these people saying, oh, we better do this now, okay? Now, not all of your why and why now stories have to be like this, but notice that this why and why now are connected to my mission around delivering tools to support the sales team, driving brand awareness and trust. It's all a hierarchy, right? Now, our key results look like this. I'm not going to go over all of the key results listed here, but what I want to emphasize is that this last one, double the quality of leads as measured by an increase in leads that convert to opportunity, right? Within 6 weeks of creation. This took us a while to write this down because what do you mean improve the quality of leads? The magic words are as measured by. So we took the time to define how do we know we're improving the quality of leads, and we put SEMA's name next to it. SEMA is the key result champion. That's absolutely vital that you put a name next to that key result. If you want to execute the strategy, you can't just come up with ideas for what wouldn't that be cool if this key result occurred. You put a name next to it. Creating that accountability, right? Now look at this. The key result champion, in our example, will be SEMA, okay? We usually have one, maybe two people, okay? So in our case, it's just SEMA, but they're on point to manage and communicate key result progress throughout the whole cycle. And there's a bunch of different things that they need to do, right? They'll create a team of typically 3 to 7 people. Here's the point. It's not only SEMA, right? Let's go back to our key result here for a second. It's not only SEMA who's in charge of doubling the quality of leads. No, this is going to take a team. So those people will be here and this team, and they'll have an action plan. They'll meet probably bi-weekly, right? Sometimes, you might want to meet weekly, but typically we're finding people meet bi-weekly. It's kind of difficult to meet every week on a key result. You could do it. I mean, you could even meet daily for all I care, but you have to have an agreed upon cadence. If you're the key result champion with your team, you know what that cadence is. And you're going to manage and update that key result action plan. And you will be the spokesperson who provides updates at a bi-weekly or monthly update. That's your role. So as an example, right, here is a key result action plan. So here is SEMA. Remember, SEMA is the key result champion, but here's the action plan for that first month. And here are the people that are going to be doing the things. Notice there's a name next to each of these action items, and it's a very short time frame, right? Mike is going to get a breakdown of lead quality percentage for each type of lead, inbound, outbound, affiliate, whatever. He's going to break down the data and figure out what's really going on here. What leads are good and what leads are bad, right? Because we got to improve that percentage. Are we buying bad leads? What's going on? And Kelly is going to plot the lead score, whatever that is, right? Versus the opportunity creation for all of the leads over the last 3 months. So a lot of this is data analysis, right? And Kim is going to audit lead quality, looking at all the sales reps, and also interview the top 3 sales reps to get tips, right? And then Yvonne is going to follow 10 leads, almost a longitudinal study of like, well, what's really going on here? I want to understand sort of what's going on. So none of these are key results. I want to be clear that we understand this. None of these are key results. These are action items. They're part of the action plan intended to drive the key result that Seema is championing, okay? So when you want to execute, the key result champion needs to have some standard way of updating the team. This is so important. It's almost like the military, right? Like, sir, I have 2 minutes. I'm going to give you an update on this key result. This is what's going on. It has to be in the same style in order to be efficient. And boy, right now, you got to be efficient. At least in the US, if you're not efficient, you don't have a job. Just talk to Elon Musk about that. All right. So here we go. So in the first box, you'll have something like, hey, how are we doing on recent activities? What is our confidence score, right? Are we improving our confidence? Well, we started 50% confident that we could achieve, and now we're at 60%. Something good is happening. But here's a blocker. Always be trying to identify blockers as a key result champion. You see here, 70% of paid affiliate leads from outside USA and are only converting at just 10%. Sorry, that's probably because of the tariffs. I'm making all these political jokes, but it's almost impossible not to. And we're not clear how and if we can pay just for the USA, right? So there's a problem here. We're paying for these leads that are coming from who knows where, and they're not in our market because the USA ones are really converting more. And then we have here an upcoming task, right? Report the percentage of leads coming from the top 10 affiliates, decide which to keep. So this is going to create more action items, which should drive our key result even to a better value. And that's why our confidence is going up. Okay. By the way, this here, imagine that you have to make a slide like this for every key result. And then you also have to have a spreadsheet that you're maintaining for every key result. Okay, spoiler alert, our next webinar is really going to drill into this step here, step 2, checking in. And this is where a software tool like Profit can really make it possible to execute. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that idea. So here are my tips for you if you're the OKRs project lead. And I did see some of you might be coaches who are helping, you know, either an internal, like your own company to execute on OKRs, or maybe you have clients and you're helping clients execute OKRs. In which case, wait, that's what I do. So I'm giving you my my secret sauce here. But what you want to do is help the teams create those mission sentences, right? That's that exercise. Let's go back to that for 1 second. So do this exercise with the team before they write OKRs. I always find this to be useful. I mean, you do this once a year, okay? Don't do this every time, every quarter or anything like that. But do it once to get that mission, right? So that will help. The next thing is make sure every key result has a champion name next to them, you know, or two. Remember Seema. Seema was the one that was the key result champion for our key result. But remember, the key result champion needs a small team with action plans. And remember those things that we need to do to drive the key result forward. Those are part of the action plan. And they're usually like a week or two, maybe a month. Celebrate wins. I didn't really talk about this, but it's a good idea to keep it positive. And then finally, and this is the key, right? Have a standard check-in template and have an agreed upon cadence. Some of my most successful clients only meet once in the middle of the cycle. Suppose they have a quarterly OKR cycle, right? So that's 3 months. They might have one formal check-in where multiple teams are updating leadership on progress once, 6 weeks in to that quarter. And that can go a long way toward allowing you to execute that strategy because it prevents surprises and it keeps people on track to actually make progress on their OKR. So I know I just went super fast. If you go back to the webinar, there might be a technology that lets you slow me down, but I get really excited about this stuff. And so the next webinar is going to be all about avoiding the biggest pitfall. And I want to claim something here. We could argue that the biggest pitfall is writing a to-do list as your OKRs. Remember I said, like, don't make it be update the blog, launch the feature, right? That could be number one, or this can be number one. It's a tie. But what I'm trying to say is most people know how to write good OKRs now. I'm not seeing that quite as often, but I still see a lot of times organizations write pretty good looking OKRs, and then they just go back to work and completely forget they even wrote OKRs. So we don't want that to happen. And that's why in our next webinar, I'm making the claim here. It's kind of funny to do a webinar and say, okay, that was great, but the most important part of your OKRs program, if you are the OKR captain, if you're listening to this and you're the one driving your OKRs program, you really want to deal with this big barrier, which is set it and forget it. And that's why we're going to have this final one in April. And I want to give you the heads up. This is where, look, in the first 3 webinars, we didn't do any demo. We didn't even show a screenshot of profit because, to be perfectly blunt, writing your OKRs, doing the reflect and reset, a lot of this stuff, you don't really need software. Writing a mission sentence, you don't need software for that. But when you get into maintaining momentum throughout the OKR cycle, we really have to show you how that works in an interactive demo. So we'll do that on our last webinar. Really excited about that. And so what I'll say now is thank you so much for making it. Let's see, how did we do? Oh, we did pretty well. We did really well. I went so fast. I'm sorry, I probably talked too fast. I should have checked the time. But we're going to suggest that you get the OKRs field book. I'm challenging Profit to send a PDF preview. Like, this is a question mark. But you can get it off also by just going to www.okrs.com. And you can fill out a form and get a PDF preview of the field book. Or I think you can just get it on Amazon. It's like $20. You can also email me if you want help with OKRs. Look, I'm going to leave you with 2 thoughts. I'm going to be totally brutally honest because why not? Why would I want to lie to you, right? And the honesty is, from my experience, the economy is not good. My business tends to predict whether things are going to go well or not in the economy. So I don't want to scare off anybody, but my leads are usually coming in like 5 a month, and we're down to like maybe 1 a month the last 5 to 6 months or so. So it's dropping. New business is down. And when I talk to people, they're no longer asking me, hey, Ben, we want your help to grow the business. A lot of the people are coming to me and saying, hey, Ben, we want your help and how to be more efficient, how to cut back, how to shrink, or how to deal with an acquisition, right? So these are different things that I'm used to seeing. And this predicts that we're going through a tougher time in the economy. The thing I want to emphasize is that, yes, we can use OKRs effectively to become more efficient. We can write objectives. Sometimes our strategy is to get lean or to survive the next year or whatever, put our seatbelts on or whatever. And that can happen. And I will tell you that the OKRs framework can be very valuable at those times. And then the final point I'll make, I don't know if anybody's from a security team. This is good news, bad news for me, okay? Security teams have discovered that working on OKRs can be incredibly valuable. The problem is it's incredibly difficult, as you can imagine. Security teams, they have a lot, they're more of an infrastructure team. So how do I really move the needle with security teams? We figured it out. I've worked with 5 massive organizations, security teams, over the last few years, and we're seeing more security teams coming in and wanting to do this OKRs work. I say it's good news, bad news, because it's good news. I can work with security teams. The bad news is this challenges me like no other organization could, because it's difficult to write really effective OKRs as a security team. But cybersecurity is an industry that seems to be exploding all over. So with those thoughts, let's open it up to Q&A. This is usually the best part of the webinar, so I'm excited that we have a solid 30 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever we have to dive into Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. I think that was a pretty insightful session. And we have some pretty good questions. And folks, I think we have about 9 questions so far. And, people who would like to add your questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A panel, right? So Ben, if we can go with the first, question, right? This is really about how to communicate the OKRs throughout the organization, right? So the question is, what are the most effective ways to communicate OKRs throughout the organization to ensure everyone understands their role in achieving them?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you 2 answers, okay? So let's see, I'm going to go over here. Okay, so this one. So let me actually just do this on the fly, okay? So this one I'm going to duplicate. So if you're a leader, let's say you're an executive or a CEO or something like that, what I want you to do, okay, is on the first slide, I want you to only show this. So in other words, only show the story, probably, yeah, mission's fine. The most important thing here is the objective and the why now. So in other words, when you communicate OKRs to the team, The old way was to show everything I had on one slide, right? So in other words, to show this when you're communicating and presenting it to the team live. And by the way, it's imperative that you, if you are a leader, that you present the OKRs live to the team. Okay, you can't just send an email or say, hey, go look it up. It's in a Google sheet. You know, any questions? Here's a link. Right? That doesn't work. You've got to present it. But when you present it, in other words, don't present it like this with all these words on the slide. I'm going to take this for today thing off because that's annoying. But don't present it like this, okay? Which is how the people used to. No, to be honest, people used to present it like, I'm going to actually just brutalize this slide. People used to present it only like, well, I shouldn't do that, I guess. Let me duplicate this one more time. People used to present it without the why and why now because they weren't even doing that. And they wouldn't have the mission. So they would present this and they would say, here's the OKR, any questions? Our objective is this, here are the key results. So they would present it on one slide. I'm trying to tell you, don't do that. I'm trying to tell you, start by presenting, hey guys, this is going to be the marketing team's OKR. First of all, here's the mission. Read it. Remind people of the mission. Then say, here's the objective. And now let's talk about why. Explain this and have a discussion. So you're going to spend about 5 minutes talking about why this objective is so important. That's going to get people emotional and engaged. And boy, when you want to execute on something, if you're going to communicate OKRs, you need that. I mean, actually, if you want to get any change in anything in your life, right, you need to get people emotional and engaged. Otherwise, they're tuned out. So really have a discussion here, and then reveal the key results and say, and here's how we're going to measure our progress. Now people will look at this and they'll understand the context in which you're presenting it. So the first tip is if you're a leader communicating OKRs, do it on 2 slides, objective and why, and then reveal the key results and have a discussion, right? So that's point number 1. Point number 2, which is, okay, how do we really make sure OKRs are visible across the organization? Here's where we need to have all OKRs in one place, okay, that are somehow searchable, right? And you know that you can slice and dice. So here I showed you the slide for one key result. And again, I really like this. I think taking the time to put a key result slide together is really good, but it's not going to help you so much with visibility of all of the OKRs. So you do need that. Now, the final question is, how do I know, right, as an employee, what am I doing? What is my role to contribute to the OKRs, right? That's sort of tucked into your question as well. And that's where you get into these action plans. Because, look, odds are Mike and Kelly and Kim and Yvonne, right, they may not be like Seema. They may not have their name next to a key result. So even if you have a tool that lets you see all the OKRs, you may not even see your name anywhere. And I'm trying to say that's okay. That can happen. In fact, it will happen. My question for you, though, is what are you doing? Where is your action plan item that allows you to see how you're contributing to an OKR? And for that, you do need a tool. So some people use Jira, right? They see, like the engineers might use that. Other people might use Asana for task management. There's all kinds of tools. I don't know for sure, but I think you can use Profit, right, Senthil, for actually having underlying action plans. Is that true?
Absolutely, right? So we can define
Yeah, there you
tasks, we
go.
can define milestones. Yeah.
So even though you may not be the key result champion and your name may not be next to a key result, like a lot of people who work in the company as individual contributors, they may have their name next to a task. And in fact, you kind of want your name next to a task that's associated with a key result, because that means you can now draw a line that says, hey, when I complete this task, that's going to, at least intended to, I don't know that it will, but it's intended to drive this key result, which is intended to drive this objective, which is intended to drive this mission, which ultimately allows our company to achieve its strategy. And I will leave you with this last thought on this question. According to research at Harvard with the progress principle, which is you can go TED Talk progress principle if you want to find it. Don't read the book, waste of time, but the TED Talk is good. But you'll find that out of all the things we do, the most meaningful thing that creates engagement is when we make progress on meaningful work. And when we're part of that team, it actually creates like almost a love of work. I don't want to say love of work because I think love is really associated with people as opposed to work. But you can find joy from your work and get satisfaction from your work. And that is so important. So if you can define measurable OKRs and then you can contribute to it and see the impact of meaningful works, right, then that's going to be a big win for you. And in order to do that, whether you're a key result champion like Seema or you're an action item person like Kelly, you're going to be part of a winning team. That's exciting. All right, that's probably a longer answer than we needed, but it was a great question. So let's keep moving.
Sure. We have a lot of questions, so we'll move along, but there's probably a quick question for you on the book. Kareen Kircher has a question. Who's the best audience for the OKRs Fieldbook? Entrepreneurial coaches or internal coaches?
Okay, so the book is designed more of a how-to book for OKRs, right? Not a you should do OKRs. The book Measure What Matters is really the book for your CEO who just wants to get an idea as to like, is this something I should do? The answer is they'll read it, they'll say yes. Now, as far as the OKRs field book, that's not the book that you're supposed to read to convince you to do OKRs. It's actually a book you should read once you've decided to do OKRs or you're already doing OKRs. And typically that's the OKRs program lead or the project lead, maybe a chief of staff or an HR business partner, agile coaches, people who are managing that program. We also call them the OKR captain, at least at Profit, I've heard that word. So that's probably who you are. Fine print. The book is written for internal coaches. In other words, you might be the person driving the OKRs program, managing it within your company, but it's also written for external coaches. And this is really a must-have book. If you're an external OKRs coach, I feel like you have to have this book on your bookshelf, the OKRs Field Book, because it's a framework that's been proven to work with hundreds of organizations around the world. And you should definitely use it as I would say, a guide, okay? And it's a reference book. So you don't have to read it end to end, but like parts of it will say, hey, how do I do a training workshop? Wait a minute, how do I do this OKR cycle coaching? What are the 3 steps of the cycle and what are the tricks for each one and all that? That's the quickest answer I can give you. So it's not everybody in your company. It's not the leadership team necessarily. It's the people who are driving and managing the OKRs program who really need to know how to do it, like your agile coaches and your external coaches.
Sure. And Ben, there's a question from Shelby, and this is specific to legal teams, right? So I'll read the question. You mentioned difficulty with OKR creation with security teams, right? I'm wondering, what's your experience with legal teams, right? Apparently she's struggling with getting them to be outcome centric.
Yes, I feel you. I think that you should be struggling. Most legal teams will struggle because for similar reasons as security, although legal even more difficult, let's take this to the extreme. So I've actually heard, it was a joke, but it wasn't that funny, right? Because there's some truth here, which is legal teams are not necessarily proactive. They're often more reactive. Like when stuff happens, we deal with it. So the CEO, we were talking about what should the OKR be for the legal team, and the CEO said the OKR should be, from the CEO's perspective, the legal team doesn't do anything. I mean, from the CEO's perspective, even though we have like a 12-person legal team, if nothing happens, that's great. Or it will be, quote, business as usual, filling out contracts, just doing the stuff that we need to do. And that's not really OKRs, because OKRs is about moving the needle, improving something, right? And we don't really need the legal team to move the needle or improve something. They just need to get their job done. So that was the short answer. And in many cases, that's going to indicate that we don't even want to write OKRs for the legal team. The fine print is, I found that most legal teams will write an OKR, because what we'll do, we need more time offline to do this, but we'll actually say, okay, look, you're a legal team. What can we do? Is there a stakeholder, right, in our organization that we are specifically focused on helping or enabling? Like, do we want to enable better sales? Do we want to enable better HR? Do we want to enable, what is it? How can we really contribute? Is it financed? Are we going public now, or whatever it is? What's going on? Can we write an objective around that for the next 6 to 12 months where we're going to be focusing on making an impact? And then, why is that so important? We go through that exercise. We often can find an OKR for the legal team. Fine print, we usually only get one. So you're not going to have like 4 objectives with 5 key results each. If you did that, you're probably doing OKRs wrong. So either you're going to have no OKRs, probably that's okay, or you're going to have one OKR. And I would say try to get one OKR, don't give up on it, but get an external coach to help you figure out what that one OKR is, because it's very hard. I'm going to leave it at that rather than going into more examples.
Sure. And Ben, probably I'll just add a couple of pointers. We recently worked with a customer, and for support organizations, like whether it is legal or HR people,
IT, yeah.
Right, IT, one approach would be, please look at your internal customers, right, which would be the, customer-facing departments. Talk to them and understand, right, how you can really help them better, right? So a lot of times it could be for legal, what we have seen is that, we want reviews to be done faster, right? And we really want, better success rates in contract negotiations, right?
Yeah.
So reducing the average contract turnaround time, better success rate, right? And overall, even satisfaction rating with your, client-facing teams, right, who are going to be taking
Yep.
your help, right?
Yep.
And
Those are good examples of key results that pop up. It's usually something around efficiency or satisfaction internally. And then
yeah,
sometimes if you're a legal team, I've seen this too, where, hey, we have a group in EMEA, we have a group in like we're an international company, right? And guess what? Um, our legal practices are supporting these operations or whatever, and we can measure how good it is. It takes, I don't know, I'm making it up, but it takes, 1 month to onboard a new employee because of legal whatever. But in EMEA, it takes 3 months. Well, that's not good. Let's reduce the time. Like, let's have legal help out to figure out ways to reduce that so it's on par with our best practices where it's 1 month. That's what it should be. So you can sometimes identify areas if you're an international or multi-location type of a thing where you can say, wait a minute, we can be doing better legally in this area, right? That's where I'm going with that.
sure. Thanks, Ben. And Praveen has a couple of questions, and I'll probably ask one. You had mentioned, Ben, that OKRs today you are seeing more, client requests, right, on OKR setup for efficiency, right, and cutback, vis-a-vis growth, right, which
Yeah,
used to be
yeah.
there previously, right? So his question is the process, the same, or with just different wording and numbers, or how's the process different, right? Let's say
Yeah.
doing OKRs for growth versus OKRs for efficiency.
I'm glad you're asking because I'm writing a paper on this. And that's a good question that I can incorporate into it. I would say it's very similar. Honestly, it's very similar. I think some of the difference are there's some challenges that you run into, right? Number one, some of these OKRs can be sensitive, right? If it's reduce headcount, well, do I really want to write an OKR and broadcast it to the whole organization around reducing headcount? Here's what we're finding. The answer is yes. So, for example, I had Sears as a client. Sears is a company from maybe the 90s or so, where they kind of started going out of business. They were a classic brick and mortar retailer, huge company in the US. And I helped them use OKRs effectively to go out of business. Their CEO discovered OKRs when it was, quote, time to start going out of business, selling off assets, et cetera. And it was an incredible success for Sears. But my publisher said, let's not put that in the book because it makes OKRs look like, companies fail if they do OKRs. But I guess what I'm trying to say is they were transparent at Sears that, look, we know the market's changing. We've got thousands of employees all over the world. We've got to figure out a way to cut back. They all know that. So they started coming up with things like increase the number of employees that were placed into new jobs. I mean, this was a company that had employees that had been there for 30 years. So they're not going to just, oh, let's secretly fire everybody, or like, they were going to be very transparent. So I think what happens is, this is why I say you have to have some more cultural questions about what are we really trying to do. And then also each team, this was the part that I found exciting. I guess you could argue that this is the same as growth, but when the CEO or some leader says, hey guys, we need to cut back because this is what's happening in the economy, I need every department, right, to come up with a way to become more efficient and propose it. And now it's more bottom up. So that can be the secret, because if you try to do top down, hey, you're going to cut back like this, you got to cut back like that. If you just do that, that's really not going to work. I'd say that's true also when you're trying to grow the business. You can't just say, hey, grow like this, grow like that. But it does also kind of work if you do that. With the reduce and get more efficient, it does not. So you really have to, at least in my experience, get this to be a bottom up movement about getting people to break out into groups, think about what can we do to become more efficient, put it in their court, propose using OKRs up to leadership team what that looks like, and then have those discussions.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Ahmed has a question, right? His question is really about the recommended cycle time for OKRs, right? His question is, how do you fit a key result into the recommended cycle, which is 3 to 4 months? Some key results may take 6 months and others may take 5 weeks.
Yeah. So first of all, you're right. We find that the recommended cycle time is probably 3 to 4 months. Some organizations, security teams, often go to 6 months because for them, 3 or 4 months is not enough. They need 6-month cycles. I find that after 6 months, OKRs kind of breaks down because you really want to have a relatively short-term cycle because you want to throw them out and start over and get learnings in that reflect and reset. Now, what you're talking about is when key results, let's say, for example, we can't make any progress on this. We're going to be working on this thing for the next 6 months, and there's no measurable progress that we can point to in the next 6 months. I see this all the time. It's difficult, but it can be done. There are a couple different answers, right? The first answer is, well, okay, great, but what is the leading indicator that we can impact? So for example, suppose that we're not even going to launch the product in the next 6 months. It's not going to happen. Great. Can we at least have a thing like 500 people come to the webinar to, that, and then express interest in potentially saying that, yes, they would buy it on a survey or something like that? Is there something that we can measure that shows that there's some value that we're creating? Maybe we demo an initial thing and we get feedback on that, right? I've seen many organizations succeed with thinking about what a leading indicator looks like. Okay. The other one is, and this one's tricky, but think about this. Happened to me with a new company that, let's say, is launching a brand new product. They have 0 customers on this product. So, okay, we can't increase revenue from X to Y because we have 0 revenue. We can't get Y customers because we have 0 customers. And guess what? And they're doing quarterly, right? By the end of the quarter, we're not even going to launch the product. So I just told you, like, launch this feature by the end of the quarter. That's a bad key result, right? Well, they can't even get that for this quarter. So what are they going to do? And what I talked to John Doerr about this, and here's what he said to do. If you have a launch date that's just really critical coming up, and that's going to be success, is just having this launch, because we got to get it launched. I mean, this is like not going to happen for 6 to 9 months, but our quarterly cycle is going to come to an end. What you would do is say, we are on track to launch by Q3, as measured by, at the end of Q1, the VP of engineering says so. So if the VP of engineering can commit to that launch date and we're at the end of, keep it there, that means we've succeeded in the key result. And the reason is there's too much uncertainty. We have no idea what's going to happen, the roadmap, this, that, the other thing. But the one person we can trust is the VP of engineering. That might sound like a weak key result. I think it kind of is a weak key result. But in some cases, that's what you're going to need to do. So when you have those timing issues, I think there's 2 stories, right? Either try to get the leading indicator, which is the best case scenario, so you can have some measurable progress of something. But if you can't do that, then you need to look at some kind of a subjective opinion of some kind of a VP person, expert in the room. The final thought I'll give you is on a leading indicator was, we had a client that was charging shoes. Literally, they had an app to make the shoelaces tighter. Well, the problem was the battery charging time was too long. I mean, nobody wants to wait 8 hours to charge their shoes because nobody ever charged their shoes before. The whole idea is foreign. And if you don't charge your shoes, you're telling me now we can't tie the shoes with the app or something. Was very odd. So they had a key result to improve the shoe sales, right? Let's say that. But they were able to nail the key result down to, on a test pair of shoes, reduce the charging time from 20 to 80% from 8 hours to 2 hours, right? So in a lab, they could do this experimental test and they could make measurable progress in a lab. It made 0 impact on any customers, but it could still be considered a leading indicator to ultimately make an impact on the customers later. So they tried to figure out what can they focus on in the near term. So I want to keep challenging you. And that question, the reason I'm giving you a long answer is it's a good question. You need to spend a lot of time thinking about, what does that near-term progress look like? What does measurable progress look like? Otherwise, the risk is we're just going to go to work on this thing and we're going to have no idea when it's going to get done, if it gets done, if it's even going to make an impact. We're just going to be lost. And there are so many people working like that, right? They're just getting stuff done, checking those boxes. Sometimes that can be effective. I'm not trying to say you should never go down that path of just sometimes we need to check boxes. But if you're going to do that, you should have at least tried to come up with an OKR before you took that path. What I'm trying to say is it's not always the case that you can write a really effective OKR for something that you need to do at work. But if you can figure out a way to make measurable progress, it's almost always time well spent.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. That was pretty helpful. We'll probably have time for maybe 2 or maybe 3 questions the most, but let me take the first one. Right? So there's a question from Saber on how can we improve our OKR setting and tracking processes, right? So it's Saber, we don't know your current state, right? But it's a sort of a general question, how to improve the process of OKR setting and tracking.
Yeah, I mean, look, so OKR setting is the first step of the OKR cycle. So that's what we did today. So hopefully you got something out of this, right? Fine print also, whether you have an external coach like me, right? or one of the people on the line today, I think we have some other external coaches, hey, out there, right? You have an outsider coming in to facilitate that session. That's great. You can also have an internal coach. So for example, I've seen, agile coaches, let's say, where they may not necessarily work with that particular team, but they'll come in to that team to facilitate the OKRs session. And by having an outsider, it creates more involvement and free thinking. The other thing that can sometimes work is to not have the leader in the room. So the leader often will say, hey, this is the objective, and here's why I think it's important. And then the leader will walk out of the room and say, you guys come up with the key results that you think represent achieving this objective and moving us toward this objective. You guys do that, and then I'll come back in about an hour and we'll see how it's going. That can be very effective because it allows free thinking and people aren't just trying to say whatever the boss wants to hear. I think that's another good tip. To be perfectly blunt, this question I should just have said, please, please get this book. I mean, this book is what is trying to describe how to make sure that your step 1 and step 2 of the cycle go really well. The key point there from step 2, right? So suppose you set your OKR. Well, let me also remind you of this. Try to write key results that look like outcomes, right? And not just output. Don't write key results that look like do this and do this. Update the blog, right? Ask the question, what is the intended outcome of the task? I probably should have said that first. This is the magic question that OKRs coaches can ask. So people are going to say, hey, here's my objective, improve marketing. Here's my key result, launch the blog. That's what they're going to do. And there's nothing wrong with them. That's what people do. Okay. That's how their brains work. But your job as the coach is to say, okay, launch the blog. Wow. What is the intended outcome of launching the blog? Is it just to say we have a blog? Or is there something that it's supposed to do? Oh, well, it's supposed to drive leads. Okay, really? How would we know if it drove leads? Well, it would, more people would sign up for the demo. Oh, really? Okay. How many people would sign up for the demo? The demo of what? Oh, okay. So now you have a landing page where they can sign up for the demo, and launching the blog, it's all about getting people to sign up for the demo. So you're going to increase the number of people that sign up for the demo from the blog from 0, because we don't even have one, to what? What would be a good number of people? Well, I don't know, at least 10. Okay. Well, is 10 the most amazing number you can imagine, or is that a number we can commit to? Well, I can't commit to anything. We've never done it before. Okay. Let's make commit be you get one person to sign up for the demo, because if you can't do that, I don't even know why we launched the blog. So you can give them tips, but you want to ask questions that help them figure out what those numbers are and that move them toward that outcome that they're shooting for, that result, rather than just a list of things they want to do. And then if you're really a good OKRs coach with the execution, I mean, look, my clients coached me into doing this. I did not do this at first, but I started working with the SEMAs of the world, right? The key result champions. And I said, look, let's come up with an action plan. Let's get the team, let me help you get that action plan in place. So if you're a really effective OKRs coach, or you're working inside your organization and you have a lot of time, don't think you're done until every key result has an action plan, right? That's what one of my clients said. We don't consider the OKRs done until every key result has an action plan. And then when we have this conversation, it's a much better conversation, because now SEMA has an action plan. SEMA's getting stuff done. SEMA can tell you, here, I'm ready to show you the 4 action items. See, it says here, be ready to drill down if asked, but keep it high level. Nobody wants to see this report for every key result. That's going to be overwhelming. But something like this that summarizes it is great. But be ready if they ask you a question to say, oh, you want to know what action items are done? These first 3. We didn't get done on that one yet. That's going to take some more time. Oh, okay. That's going to make you look good. And when people look good, they like OKRs. So if you want to make the OKR project work, find ways to make people like SEMA look good. Find ways to make people like Mike look good, right? Maybe even on this slide, have SEMA say, because of Mike, we're in great shape. He figured out that the paid affiliates, this is a breakthrough. Call him out, celebrate the win. All right, that's probably a lot more than you needed.
Thanks, Ben. That's super helpful. Probably a couple of last questions very quickly. One, both Praveen as well as Asha have asked, how is AI helping in writing OKRs, tasks, or tracking and predicting things now?
Gosh, well, full disclosure, okay. Last year they tried to make an AI version of me. one other company tried to be like, ask Ben about OKRs, and you would type in things like, how do I, like these questions, right? How do I get started with OKRs, or what are the most common pitfalls, or how do I make sure OKRs are written effectively, or whatever. And it would give you an answer, and it was pretty good. So I do think that my job, I didn't think this a year ago, but maybe I'm starting to think it now, that my job is somewhat at risk because I do think that these AI engines are starting to get pretty good and that they can almost replace me. But I'll also say that AI is also maybe a little bit out of touch with what's really going on for your organization because of the emotional component. So when we talk about, if it's just simply like what Sentil was doing when you ask the legal question, if it says, hey, give me 10 examples of key results that are working for legal teams, boom. AI will be better than me and Sentil combined. There's no way that we can compete with that. But if you're trying to say, hey, this is my strategy, or this is my mission, what should my objective be? Well, it doesn't know. In fact, to be honest with you, like going back to this mission exercise, this category management team, before I started working with them, they didn't even know what their mission was. So this is not the kind of thing AI can help you with. And in fact, they, as in the team, had to have a discussion for almost an hour to fight through the creation of this mission. And that is time well spent that AI cannot do. So I think with group work and sort of the way that we learn, I think has to have that OKRs experience of developing OKRs, debating OKRs, figuring out, aligning on stuff, right? That needs to happen. AI can maybe help us a little bit with examples of legal key results or some things it can do. But I think that you've got to make sure that that process happens. The one thing I didn't really get into is that to make these OKR setting processes effective, in many cases, you need to bring in people from outside your team. So with security, I think we did talk about this a little bit with legal. But the big tip was, if security is really dependent on engineers, bring in some engineers into the security OKR development session right from the start. That way we can align right from the start. And again, that's a best practice that I would say really helps us out with step one. So yeah, AI, you always have to get a question in on that. I don't know, it sort of hits a nerve. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know what AI is really going to do, but I am a little bit thinking that AI will be more of an add-on to OKRs as opposed to like replacing OKRs coaching completely, or so I hope, because I hope I still have a job, right, in the next year or two.
Sure. In fact, when we are currently working with a customer with nearly 800 users, across
Yeah.
the enterprise, and the way the CEO spoke about AI in Profit.co was that he said that it's really removing the friction in adoption, right? Because I want to ensure that I'm able to set high quality goals across the enterprise, right? And
Yeah.
AI is really helping. That was one of the viewpoints that I heard. People are really, CEOs are looking for, how do I remove the friction in adoption? How do I, take it forward? That's one viewpoint, but really like your answer. We are almost up the hour, probably the last question, and somebody has asked, is there an app or tool that you can recommend to see the OKR system in place holistically and how one might influence others? Any visually appealing maps that can be used for? Yeah, any app or tool
Well,
recommend?
I don't have one that I can recommend. I mean, look, let me just sort of see if I have this. I don't even know if I have it in here. I don't think I do. There's some there's ways to visualize OKRs and how they're connected. I have seen a bunch of those things, and the problem is that they're always moving. So, this, if you think about it, what would be really cool is to have an action plan underneath your key results. So if you had, where's my slide that I have the action plan? Is this one? So here's the key result. So how do these action plans, right? Each of these items move up into the key result? Well, these are always changing. Like every couple of weeks, you're crossing them out and starting with new ones. So it would be really cool to be able to click on the key result and see those action plan items. But I don't know if I'd want to see a map where every one of these action items was pointing into this key result, because remember, there's key results that are then pointing into objectives. Objectives could be either pointing into mission or potentially other objectives. So the map can get very complicated. So I've definitely seen software solutions, I probably won't name them, that have done like massive maps that are just like, wow, I'm really, really confused of how this all relates. But I think what's useful, and I haven't seen this really in any solution, but it's like the ability to say, okay, across this objective, how many action plans does it have, right? How many action plan items have been done, right? Stuff like that. That would be nice, sort of a progress report that's automated. I haven't really seen that. I've seen some people try to build this in Excel, and it's a joke, because as you can imagine, look, unless you're, a massive programmer and you want to spend hours and hours, Excel is actually really good for designing things and getting started. But then when you want to make a change or you decide to do this or whatever, unless you built it up in some perfect pivot table format that's not user friendly to even add data into, you're going to get into a problem. So, look, that could also be a good place to put in a plug for Profit. I think one of the reasons why Profit gets high ratings is reporting. Really, your question is about reporting. How do I view reports? Once we put all the OKRs into place, can I create a report that shows me this? And the answer is, I think in Profit, that's one of the stronger things you can do. I will say in some of the solutions I've seen, you actually had to hire somebody that knows Java to program stuff in order to build a report, which means you won't be doing any reporting. I would also say, though, that it's not necessarily the most critical thing to be able to create reports from an OKRs tool. What's more important, and this is what we're going to be doing next time, so this is a good way to end it, is having this interactive conversation check-in thing, have a way to make this live and dynamic in such a way that people speak to it in the same way and put all of the data of updating progress in the same system, which can then be viewed and clicked around and looked at, as opposed to like printing out some massive report, because this is not like financial statements. Everything's changing all the time, and you want to be able to see the thing that you want to be able to see and know it's there, okay? As opposed to trying to show maps on how everything connects. I don't know if that's exactly the answer you were looking for, but I'm just trying to say I'd be careful about trying to focus on the mapping of things. The other one, though, of off-the-shelf tools is Miro. Miro has done a pretty good job of showing how things connect. But if you've ever used Miro, after a while, you're just like, wow, right? There's arrows everywhere. You get lost.
Hey, Ben, I know we are up to time, but just one last question. I missed this from Christian. Christian's question is, wouldn't it make sense to co-create the KRs with the responsible team, at least with the KR champion?
Oh, absolutely. You have to do that. You have to bring in the KR. The KR champions should be part of the team defining the OKR from the start. And even taking it further, you might even want to involve some people from outside that team. So if you're an engineering team writing OKRs, if you know product or if you know marketing or QA or data or whatever is involved and you're collaborating with them a lot, you may want to bring in a couple people from those teams right away, even as you're drafting OKRs. And what often happens is the teams end up not perfectly mapping to the org chart. So you don't have, engineering, product, marketing, finance, right? You end up with a squad where you might have, let's say you're eBay, you might have the buyer squad, the seller squad, the advertiser squad. So you might go customer segment, or you might go process. Like we were working with Walmart, and they were like, here's the checkout, here's the account setup, here's the shopping experience, here's the whatever, right? Here's the recommendations or whatever. So you'd have different parts of the customer journey, and you'd have a team dedicated to that part of the journey. And now it's cross-functional. So you're bringing in the engineers, you're bringing in the product people, you're bringing in UX or whatever. You're bringing in all those people together to form an OKR team. That seems to be the direction that most organizations are going with OKRs, as opposed to just purely looking at the org chart and saying, hey, this team creates OKRs, that team creates OKRs, and we do it in silos, right? Because that can create problems. So again, that I think is a big topic. So much more to say, but again, great questions. I'm so glad we had time for so many questions. And I really do encourage you to go to the site, OKRs.com, get a PDF preview of the book, or stay tuned, because I'm thinking I can twist some arms over at Profit and they can just send a follow-up email and say, hey, here's the PDF preview of the OKRs field book. And that way it'll just come to your email and you don't have to do anything.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ben. We will absolutely do it. And folks, thanks a lot for staying with us so far. We had 25 plus questions, right? We were probably able to answer probably about half of them, right? So, but please stay in touch. We will having the final session on April 8th, right? So we'll see you there again on April 8th, right? So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Ben, for a pretty insightful session.
Yep. Thank you, Santil.